Hello and welcome to Beelzebub's Buns channel. In this video, I want to merge one well-known video game franchise with a lesser remembered video game in order to promote a cool concept and theory. One video game franchise I'll be talking about, you all know so well, Halo. The other video game that never produced a sequel, sadly, but understandably, is Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter released in the summer of 2003 on the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. And Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter was developed by Warthog Games. No, not that Warthog. This Warthog. Warthog Games was an England developer company that became defunct in 2006, just under a decade of being in business. I first read about the video game Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter in a Game Informer magazine when I was a kid in the year of 2002. And the title for that article was England's Answer to Halo. I remember this Game Informer magazine cover so well as I kept this magazine issue and plenty of other Game Informer magazine issues as a kid, and I would read them in my family's van on those seemingly long road trips to San Diego. I remember it being the summer of 2002 during June gloom, a phrase used to describe the overcast weather that is frequent in the month of June in California. The air was wet, and I remembered that it ended up raining as I was in the van reading up on this awesome, soon-to-be-released first-person shooter video game named Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter that was set to rival with Halo. I'm sure many of you can relate to the smell of a dense magazine with colorful pages and information mixed with the smell of rain outside. Or maybe that's just me, I'm not sure. Well, as I read up on Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, I recall watching the raindrops skew past the backseat window of my family's van as I imagined flying a spaceship in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter throughout the Southern California hills. I recall a lot of oddly vivid memories as a kid. Perhaps that's why I like writing and narrating my own stories. I was so excited to see another game step up to the plate in the first-person shooter genre to attain Game of the Year like Halo Combat Evolved did. So I was locked in to following this game, Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, though I had no idea I would have to wait over an entire year until the game finally came out in 2003. An approximate release date was nowhere to be seen in the Game Informer magazine. I remember there were paragraphs vaguely describing what the game was about, and there were two pictures, one of which the player was piloting a spaceship, and the other one was the player running around on foot with a firearm in their hand. That was it. So after a year went by, I was so excited to finally be able to get Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. As far as the game Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter being a successful answer to Halo, well, it fell short of a lot of things that Halo was able to accomplish back in 2001. Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, however, has a unique strength that the entire Halo franchise has never tried to implement, and that is taking control of your spaceship while remaining in first person and deciding when you want to dock your spaceship. You are Mace Griffin and are tasked with helping out different colonies in which some have built their settlements on asteroids. But instead of the game showing you an in-game cutscene of Mace Griffin going to the location and then walking out of your spaceship, you can explore the space around you in your ship before you dock to start the mission. The game also utilizes this space for dogfights whenever you have to eliminate enemy forces, chase down important antagonists, or escort a VIP. But after the fighting is done, or if there is nobody to fight when you start the mission in the first place, you have this large space to fly around, and this is really something to behold for a game that came out in 2003 when it focused on solidifying on-foot first-person engagements. I wouldn't say this space exploration was really an afterthought because it is just too massive for the developers to just decide this would be something nice to have where you can fly around in your spaceship. But, of course, in today's time period, there would be something out here for you to explore. And this is what I'm getting at. If the Halo franchise were to allow you to do something like this, where you can explore out in space, I just wonder what game developers would be able to add in a space like this where you can simply, if you want to, put your spaceship in pilot mode and just walk away from it. You can explore your ship, and you'll notice how the particular lighting used for the interior conveys a dark militaristic theme that is present throughout the entire game of Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. And this theme is also very present in the Pillar of Autumn in Halo Combat Evolved. Something about the atmosphere of the Pillar of Autumn made me feel like I was truly on board a ship. Like I was not the center of attention, but rather I was a small part of a massive moving ship in space. Whereas Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, the ship is, of course, smaller, and I am in control of it, but I feel as if there is always something larger going on in the game. Many gamers may be able to come up with a list of video games that have you control a spaceship in first person, but this video is looking at what the Halo franchise could possibly adopt as a way to help players feel attached to something meta in the game. Because in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, you get familiar with this ship. You fly other spaceships in the game, but this one is your own. I believe the feeling of attachment is built through your ability as the player to control yourself entering the location in which you are going to complete your mission. If the game just had you in a menu screen of you orbiting around your next mission location, and you press the A button on your Xbox controller to begin the mission, and there was no actual control of you going to your location, then the attachment to your spaceship would be lost. As for Halo, imagine doing this in some type of game mode or a few campaign levels where you fly a Pelican or a Saber and you land in certain destinations under your complete control. I'm not talking about open world exactly, but if you were able to fly your ship, whether that be a Pelican or anything else that is large enough to walk around in, where you can load your weapons, talk to characters in the game that are on your ship, and then when you're done dicking around out in space, you can go to your destination to begin the mission, then this is something I think the Halo franchise would really benefit from to exemplify and embellish that idea that Halo gets involved in space, that it's not always just boots on the ground, and getting from one destination to another while in space is not just reserved for cutscenes. In Halo Reach, the level named Long Night of Solace has you fight in space in third-person view, as Noble Six is controlling a Saber. This was a great addition to the game, but for the sake of story pace, you would disembark from the Saber and infiltrate the Covenant Corvette in order to destroy it. So, bye-bye Saber. Perhaps a Unity Air Force pilot got in it and flew away from the Corvette before it was destroyed. But one thing is for sure, though, is that us Halo fans got to enjoy the Saber for the short time that we were able to use it. Being able to opt for a first-person view and to have any kind of game mode or a mission where you can explore while you're piloting your Saber, I believe that could have built an attachment between the player and the Saber. Something about a first-person view from the cockpit of a vehicle, I believe, connects the player to that vehicle. That's why in one of the levels in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter, when I was ready to leave my ship and talk to the non-hostile settlement, I was questioning to myself what they were doing to my ship. Where was it going? Will it be alright? Is someone going to try to salvage it? Even though it was just being stored and moved out of the way for other ships, I was concerned for my ship and I was ready for a twist to the story in the game. Something just felt so sinister to the entire level right when they lowered my ship out of view. I just never felt that before, but I was feeling it in this game that was released in 2003, and it flopped in sales and never saw a sequel. Despite Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter not being the best answer to Halo, the concept of the player having control over a ship should be a concept 343 Industries can put into practice for the Halo franchise. My theory is that Halo would definitely benefit from implementing this in some way. Overall, I'm very happy to get my hands on Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter again, as I hardly remember each and every detail about the levels other than what it was like to fly the spaceships in the game. I'm playing this on an original Xbox, and depending on what version of the original Xbox you have, using an HDMI converter cable could display some grainy lines. I enjoy playing original Xbox games from time and again, so I got used to the display pretty quickly. Now that I covered the major strength in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter being spaceship combat, transitioning to boots on the ground, let me talk about the boots on the ground aspect a bit more. The game Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter plays very well, just like Halo. The visuals are solid when you consider this game is from 2003. The bump mapping is apparent only on the Xbox version. The weapon models look great and sound very distinct from one another. In fact, the primary weapon you'll use in the game is this Gatling machine gun, which goes absolutely ballistic when you hold down the trigger. The machine gun has a secondary function, that being the grenade launcher, but it also has a third function, which is locking onto targets, and this makes firing at targets that are moving, like in this section on rails, easier. And that's great for this game because the checkpoint system is terrible. The AI in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter shows its age, however, as enemies are not that smart at moving around the already linear space that they have to work with. In contrast with the actual space fights, where you have a lot of room to roam around, check out, and do some rather shallow galactic exploration, you'll notice that the on-foot section of the levels in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter are akin to something that you'd see in the first Red Faction game or an early 2000s first-person shooter, where the level forces you to feel like you are just going from point A to B. We know that is not the case with Halo Combat Evolved. The sandbox feel of Halo with the speed and clever AI makes Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter's engagements look like child's play. It's always going to be hard to top Marty O'Donnell's and Michael Salvatore's score, but much of the non-diegetic music in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter just repeats itself over and over again while you're playing, making some sections just feel even more draining.
You're going to hell! Oh, you're a dead man! Anyone hear that?
The sniping in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter is also what you would expect from a typical early 2000s linear first-person shooter. It's nothing all that inspiring, and the sniper rifle round certainly doesn't feel all too powerful when you consider the enemy death animations. Whereas in Halo Combat Evolved, a single shot to the skull feels like the enemy has weight to their body as they fall to the ground, and dirt kicks up from the bullet going through the enemy.
Holster that weapon! Sorry? Holster that weapon!
Also, many of your friendly AIs will yell at you to holster your weapon with the same voice actor. I only wish there was a button where I could holster my weapon, because I would walk around certain sections of a level where all is good to go. For example, I walked into a pool section of a certain level, and everyone was enjoying their time. It looked very peaceful in there. I walk through with my shotgun out, and I just look absolutely ridiculous. I try to holster, but I'm pulling out grenades, and then I pull out my shocker, and there's nothing that I can do to actually holster these for them to go away, so I just stand there with my weapon out. Now that you have seen the shotgun, I must tell you that this shotgun in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter is still my favorite shotgun in any first-person shooter so far. Depending on how many shells you have, you can load up to 4 shells at the same time, because there are 4 separate barrels for the shotgun. The funny thing is, the satisfying part is not necessarily firing 4 shells at the same time, but charging the shotgun 4 times to load 4 shells is a unique feeling that I have never felt before in other games. Then again, I can only play so many games in so little time.
Eat this, tough guy.
I also like the way the glass shatters in this game. You can tell where Warthog Games drew inspirations from for Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. Some cheesy 80s action and science fiction films, to some video game inspirations like Halo, and what I mentioned earlier, the first Red Faction game. In fact, who's to say no Bungie employee saw the same Game Informer magazine issue like I did in the year of 2002, and read about Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter eyeing the spotlight of the first-person shooter genre. Perhaps Bungie may have considered certain aspects from the studio Warthog Games in their creation of Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. And maybe a bit of that inspiration became apparent in Bungie's swan song to the Halo franchise in 2010 when they released Halo Reach. Halo Combat Evolved's presentation is superior to that of Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. The combat in Halo is much sleeker as the enemies and friendlies are much smarter when maneuvering, evading, and engaging their targets. Halo also has much richer dialogue, no matter if it is you in the frantic fray or watching an in-game cinematic play out. Even the loading screen in Halo Combat Evolved is much more interesting. But Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter is a fantastic classic game to play on the original Xbox. Certain interior sections can look better than Halo, and an ominous tone stretches throughout the entire game of Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. The story is dark. You can't trust many of the characters you meet since you are essentially a gun for hire, so when you take control of your ship and chase someone down, you have a feeling that you might just be getting involved in a situation much larger than what you can handle. The transitions between running through tight corridors and some open asteroid terrain to continuing the same mission but in space was and still is awesome to see executed so well on the original Xbox. I want to show you and have you listen to a certain part of the campaign that is a prime example of the foreboding atmosphere that is ever so prevalent in Mace Griffin Bounty Hunter. The music can seem repetitive in some firefight sections of the game, but the subtle score in this upcoming segment is done perfectly, as it makes you, the player, feel like you're heading to your doom as you approach the settlement. Enjoy. By the way, I love the meteoroids bouncing off of the cockpit viewport. If you look closely, you can see them bounce off. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next videos.